February 15th, 1944, over Rabaul, New Britain. Captain John Davies grips the yoke of his B-25 Mitchell, knuckles white. The sky isn't blue, it's a dirty gray ceiling, pockmarked with black blossoms of death. Japanese anti-aircraft fire. The ground crew calls it flak, a name too soft for the jagged metal that tears through aluminum skin and human flesh with equal indifference. Davies' target is a fuel depot, a collection of half-buried tanks holding thousands of gallons of high-octane aviation gas. Destroy it, and Japanese air power in the region is crippled for weeks. Fail, and the Marines hitting the beaches on Green Islands will face a sky full of zeros. The pressure is immense. Through the intercom, the voice of his bombardier, Lieutenant Miller, is a strained monotone. Bomb run starting. Hold her steady, Captain. Holding steady is a fantasy. The B-25 shudders as a shell explodes just off their port wing, peppering the fuselage with shrapnel. Davies fights the controls, his eyes locked on the horizon, trying to give Miller the stable platform the Norden bombsight demands. The Norden, the military's million-dollar secret weapon, a mechanical brain sworn to put a bomb in a pickle barrel from 20,000 feet. The crew has sworn an oath to die before letting it fall into enemy hands. On paper, it's a miracle of engineering. In the violent, unpredictable skies over the Pacific, it's a heartbreak machine. Bombs away, Miller calls. Davies feels the familiar lurch as 4 500-pound bombs leave the bay. He banks the bomber hard, pushing the engines to their limit to escape the cone of fire. The crew counts the seconds. The explosion comes not with a satisfying roar, but a distant, muffled thump. A geyser of earth and fire erupts from the jungle floor, a full 400 yards east of the fuel tanks. A perfect bracket for a target that isn't there. The voice of the squadron leader crackles over the radio, pure acid. "Target standing, Davies. You're clear to make another pass." Another pass. Through the same wall of steel. It's a death sentence. Davies grits his teeth and turns the bomber back toward the target. The Japanese gunners have their range now. The black puffs are closer, the concussions more violent. A direct hit rattles the cockpit, shattering an instrument panel. Miller recalibrates, adjusting for wind drift and airspeed, whispering prayers to the complex gears of the Norden. Steady, steady. Again, the call of bombs away. Again, the hard bank, the desperate climb. This time, the explosions are closer. They walk across a row of barracks adjacent to the depot. Secondary explosions follow as an ammo dump goes up. Men are dying down there, but the fuel, the primary objective, remains untouched. Back at base on Bougainville, the debriefing is a study in frustration. Davies' story is the same as 6 other pilots. 16 tons of bombs dropped. The fuel depot is still operational. A reconnaissance photo shows craters scattered randomly across a square mile of jungle. The official report from 5th Air Force for February 1944 will be damning. Despite overwhelming air superiority, less than 20% of bombs are falling within 1,000 feet of their intended targets. Every mission is a gamble, paid for with aircraft and lives. The Norden bomb sight, the key to America's strategic bombing doctrine, isn't winning the war, it's prolonging it. The best minds in military engineering designed it, but in the chaos of combat, their calculations are proving fatally wrong. They need a new kind of mind to see the problem they can't. The problem wasn't a lack of technology. In fact, the Allies possessed what was billed as a war-winning secret weapon, the Norden M9 bombsight. On paper, it was a miracle of mechanical engineering, a complex analog computer of gears, mirrors, and gyroscopes. It was so secret, bombardiers swore an oath to destroy it with a thermite charge rather than let it be captured. Propaganda promised the Norden could drop a bomb in a pickle barrel from 20,000 feet. The reality, for pilots like Captain Davies, was a nightmare of physics and fear. The Norden's genius was also its fatal flaw. It demanded perfect information and perfect conditions, 2 things that don't exist in war. To work, the bombardier would peer through its telescope, locate the target, and input the aircraft's exact ground speed, altitude, and the wind's velocity. The sight would then calculate the precise release point. For the final, critical 30 to 60 seconds of the approach, the Norden's autopilot would take control of the bomber, guiding it on a perfectly straight and level course. This was the bomb run. It was also a suicide run. A heavy bomber flying straight and level for a full minute was a predictable, non-maneuvering target for every anti-aircraft gunner and enemy fighter pilot below. Even if a bomber crew survived the wall of flak, the perfect conditions were a fantasy. A single cloud obscuring the target at the last moment rendered the entire run useless. Smoke from previous bomb hits or defensive screens did the same. The data itself was often a wild guess. Wind speed could change dramatically between altitudes. An error of just a few miles per hour in the wind calculation could send a bomb hundreds of feet astray. A slight miscalculation in altitude, the same. The pickle barrel was a myth. A 1,944 USAAF analysis revealed a shocking truth. On average, only 50% of bombs aimed at precision targets fell within a quarter mile of their aiming point. The result was a catastrophic cycle of failure. Entire bomber groups risked hundreds of lives to drop thousands of tons of explosives, only to churn up empty fields, leaving the critical objective intact. For the air crews, it was a special kind of hell. They were flying the most advanced aircraft, using the most sophisticated equipment, and still, every mission felt like a lottery. They followed procedure, flew into the fire, and watched their bombs fall wide, knowing they'd have to do it all over again tomorrow, gambling their lives against a puzzle that the world's best engineers had declared solved. Precision bombing wasn't a science, it was a pipe dream. While pilots like Captain Davies fight and die in the skies over the Pacific, the war is also being fought in quiet, fluorescent-lit offices thousands of miles away. In a basement room of the Army Ordnance Department in Washington, D.C., the air smells of paper, ink, and stale coffee. This is the domain of the computers. Dozens of women armed with slide rules and mechanical calculators, tasked with processing the raw data of war. Among them is Eleanor Vance. She is not an engineer. Her official title is Mathematical Analyst, Grade 3. She is a civilian, a number cruncher, a ghost in the vast military machine. Eleanor Vance is also a widow. A framed photograph on her desk shows a smiling young man in an Army Air Forces uniform. Captain David Vance, her husband, was killed 6 months ago over Germany. He was a navigator on a B-17. His last letter spoke of the flak, the cold, and the terrifying inaccuracy of their bombing runs. Now, Eleanor's life is a different kind of battle. A daily struggle with ration books, finding a reliable neighbor to watch her 5-year-old son, Thomas, and the profound, echoing silence of her small apartment after he's asleep. The war is not an abstract concept for her. It's the empty chair at her dinner table. She doesn't have an engineering degree from MIT or Caltech. She has a mathematics degree from the University of Iowa. Her real education came from growing up on a farm during the Depression. While the engineers she works for were studying calculus, Eleanor was learning the intuitive physics of machinery. She could diagnose a failing tractor engine by its sound, rewire a water pump with scavenged parts, and true a bent axle with a sledgehammer and a good eye. She understood how things worked in the real world, a world of mud, wind, and imperfect conditions. She knew that elegant theories often shattered the moment they met brute reality. This perspective shapes how she sees her work. She pores over the after-action reports from the Pacific, the same ones detailing the failures of the Norden bomb site. Her male supervisors see statistical noise, acceptable margins of error, the unavoidable fog of war. Eleanor sees a pattern. She reads about pilots struggling to maintain a perfectly straight and level bombing run for 30 seconds and thinks of driving a cultivator in a straight line across a lumpy field in a crosswind. She reads about gyroscopes failing under G-force and remembers how a loose bolt could throw an entire threshing machine out of rhythm. The engineers see a problem of calculation, how to make a better mechanical brain. Eleanor sees a human problem. She sees a young pilot, like her David, wrestling with a complex instrument, trying to align crosshairs while being shot at, his hands slick with sweat, his aircraft bucking like a frightened horse. The system demanded perfection from men in the most imperfect of situations. It was designed in a sterile lab for a theoretical war, not the violent, chaotic reality of combat. To Eleanor, the problem isn't that the bomb site's calculations are wrong. The problem is that it's asking the wrong questions. She doesn't have rank, authority, or an engineering pedigree. but she has a farmer's grasp of mechanics, a mathematician's eye for hidden patterns, and a widow's burning need to stop the waste. Eleanor Vance's war is fought after dark, at a small kitchen table under a single dim bulb. Her son sleeps in the next room. Her weapons are stacks of paper that smell of stale ink and desperation, after-action bombing reports from the Pacific. By day, she plots data for mid-level analysts. By night, she hunts for a ghost in the machine. The reports are a litany of failure. Target: fuel depot. Altitude: 12,000 feet. Wind: 15 knots from port. Result: bombs fell 800 yards long. Target: runway. Altitude: 10,000 feet. Wind: gusting to 25 knots. Result: bombs impacted harmlessly in jungle. The numbers blur, but the pattern is brutally clear. The Norden bomb site, the supposed miracle weapon, is a fair-weather assassin. It demands a perfectly straight, level, unaccelerated flight path for the final 30 seconds of the bombing run. It demands a world without turbulence, without evasive maneuvers, without the terror of anti-aircraft fire tearing through the fuselage. It demands a mathematical ideal in a world of visceral chaos. Eleanor sees the flaw not in the engineering, which is brilliant, but in its philosophy. The Norden tries to force reality to conform to its calculations. It's a rigid system fighting a fluid battle. Every night, fueled by weak tea and a quiet, simmering rage, she wages her own war against this flawed philosophy. Her husband Robert's picture sits on the mantelpiece, his smile a constant, aching reminder of the cost of failure. He wasn't a pilot, but he was on a supply ship sunk by bombers that should have been taken out weeks earlier. The war isn't an abstract equation for her, it's the empty chair at her table. Her laboratory isn't a government facility, it's her kitchen. She uses a salt shaker to represent the B-25, a sugar bowl for the target. She slides a dinner knife across the checkered oilcloth, mimicking a crosswind. She suspends a button from a piece of thread, watching it swing as she moves the shaker, trying to feel the physics of a falling bomb. She isn't recalculating drag coefficients or terminal velocities. The engineers have done that to death. She is trying to understand the human interface, the gap between the bombardier's eye and the exploding Earth. The existing system is too slow. The bombardier inputs data airspeed, altitude, wind, and the site calculates a single, unchangeable release point. But in combat, that data is obsolete the second it's entered. The pilot nudges the throttle, the plane hits an air pocket, a gust of wind shifts. The perfect solution becomes a perfect miss. Late one Tuesday night, while stirring her tea, the insight strikes her. The spoon swirls in the cup, its path constantly changing with the motion of her hand. The Norden tries to predict the future. What if the sight just showed the present? What if, instead of a fixed crosshair the bombardier had to align, the crosshair itself moved, a dynamic reticle, a ghost on the glass that continuously updated, showing the bomb's predicted point of impact based on the aircraft's times real-time times telemetry. If the plane banked, the reticle would slide sideways. If it climbed, the reticle would drop. It wouldn't be about flying the plane to match the sight. It would be about the sight matching the plane, second by second. It was a shockingly simple idea. It bypassed the need for complex pre-calculation and a 30-second dance with death. It gave the bombardier a direct, intuitive, visual link to the target. It turned a rigid calculation into a reactive tool. She grabs one of her son's crayons and a brown paper bag, smoothing it out on the table. She sketches a simple gyroscope linked to a projected light source, the beam deflected by inputs from the plane's pitot tube and altimeter. It's crude, almost childish. It has none of the Norden's elegant complexity. But it's not designed for a laboratory. It's designed for a terrified 20-year-old in a rattling metal box, 10,000 feet above a world that's trying to kill him. Eleanor presents her initial schematics on October 12, 1944. The meeting is with Dr. Arthur Coleman, head of the Applied Physics Division, a man who views the war as a series of complex equations to be solved by men with doctorates from MIT. He glances at her detailed drawings for less than a minute. "Mrs. Vance," he says, his tone a mix of paternalism and impatience, "your diligence is noted, But this is a fanciful distraction. Leave the engineering to the engineers. We have you collating data for a reason. He doesn't critique the math. He doesn't question the mechanics. He dismisses the source. A civilian woman, a data analyst, has no place redesigning critical military hardware. The rejection is a brick wall. But Eleanor grew up on a farm where you didn't give up because a tractor broke down. You found a way to fix it. She formalizes her proposal, a 20-page document complete with force diagrams and projected error rate reductions. She submits it through official channels. It comes back 2 weeks later, unread, with a single red stamp on the cover. Rejected, beyond designated scope. The system isn't just skeptical, it's designed to silence voices like hers. Her colleagues, all men, offer no support. Some are openly derisive, nicknaming her project Eleanor's Folly. Others just avoid her, unwilling to be associated with a career-ending dead end. Her real work begins after she puts her son, Thomas, to bed. While the city sleeps under blackout curtains, Eleanor turns her kitchen table into a laboratory. She's fighting a war on 2 fronts, against institutional inertia by day, and against sheer, bone-deep exhaustion by night. Building a prototype becomes an obsession, but every component is a battle. She needs access to the facility's machine shop, a grimy sanctuary of lathes and presses run by men who build weapons, not theories. The foreman, Gus, initially laughs her off. "Lady, I've got priority work for the B-29 seconds. I can't stop to make your whatever that is." She doesn't argue. She learns his schedule. She finds him on his lunch break, offering him 2 of her precious ration coupons for sugar in exchange for 10 minutes on a metal lathe. She uses her lunch hours to plead for scrap aluminum. She trades her mathematical skills, helping a junior engineer with his stalled calculations, for a handful of salvaged ball bearings. She needs a small, high-quality gyroscope, a component controlled by the military. She finds one in a junkyard, stripped from the wreckage of a crashed training plane, and pays for it with a week's grocery money. The fight wears her down. She grows thinner. Her hands are constantly smudged with grease and nicked from metal filings. One evening, Coleman finds her in the machine shop long after hours, hunched over a milling machine. He doesn't yell. His quiet disappointment is worse. "Mrs. Vance, this has gone far enough. You are misusing government property and time. This obsession ends. Now, I'm putting a formal reprimand in your file." He sees a single mother overstepping her bounds. He doesn't see the woman who is on the verge of solving a problem that is killing thousands of men just like her late husband. The system hadn't just rejected her idea, it was now actively trying to crush it. March 12, 1944. Muroc Army Airfield, California. The high desert wind whips sand across a desolate bombing range. A lone B-25 Mitchell bomber circles at 10,000 feet. On the ground, Eleanor Vance stands beside the runway, clutching a clipboard. She hasn't slept in 48 hours. Her entire life, her late husband's memory, the hope of saving other women from becoming widows, all of it comes down to a crude device bolted to the bomber's instrument panel. Her prototype is a mess of scavenged dials, wires, and repurposed lenses, held together with little more than solder and sheer will. It looks like something from a child's workshop, not the key to winning the war. The only reason this test is happening is Captain John Miller, a veteran pilot with 50 missions over Europe and a deep-seated hatred for the Norden bombsite. He's seen too many friends die on bombing runs that missed by half a mile. After weeks of being stonewalled, Eleanor found Miller in an officer's mess, and her quiet, mathematical certainty convinced him. He pulled every string he had to secure a plane, a bombing range, and a single skeptical observer, Major Franklin, who made it clear he was only there to document the inevitable failure. The target is a 50-foot white circle painted on the desert floor. The conditions are deliberately terrible. A gusting 20-knot crosswind, the kind of weather that renders a Norden completely useless. Miller's voice crackles over the ground radio. "All right, Eleanor, on the bombing run, your little contraption is telling me some pretty wild things." Major Franklin shakes his head, muttering about wasted fuel. Eleanor grips her clipboard so tightly her knuckles are white. She watches the B-25, a silver speck against the harsh blue sky. It doesn't fly straight and level like a Norden run requires. Miller is making slight adjustments, banking, correcting for the wind, just as a pilot would in combat. The bomb bay doors open. A single 500-pound practice bomb drops away, a dark teardrop against the sky. On the ground, there is only the sound of the wind. The seconds stretch into an eternity. Franklin has his binoculars trained on the target, expecting the puff of dust hundreds of yards away. The bomb doesn't land near the target. It doesn't bracket it. It punches straight through the painted circle, dead center. A perfect bullseye. A plume of orange smoke and dirt erupts from the exact middle of the target. Silence. Major Franklin lowers his binoculars, his mouth slightly open. He looks at Eleanor, then back at the smoking crater. Miller's voice comes over the radio, electric with disbelief. Did you guys see that? I saw that. It hit. Holy hell, it actually hit. Franklin grabs the radio handset. Miller, what's your status? Miller's reply is breathless. I'm coming around for another pass, Major. There's a moving target on the rail line south of here. Let's see what this thing can really do. The second target is a wooden sled, simulating a moving supply truck. The crosswind is even stronger. Another perfect run. Another direct hit, splintering the sled into 1,000 pieces. This wasn't a fluke. It wasn't luck. It was a revolution contained in a box of scrap metal and glass. On the ground, Eleanor Vance finally allows herself to breathe. She has proven the unprovable. The military establishment, with all its experts and engineers, was wrong. And a report of this impossible test is now on its way to Washington. A report that Major Franklin, his skepticism shattered, is writing himself. The war in the air is about to change forever. The revolution didn't begin with an official directive. It started with a whisper. On airfields across the Pacific, pilots and ordnance crews started talking about Eleanor's window, a bomb site modification that actually worked. Schematics, hand-drawn on greasy napkins, were passed between squadrons like contraband. Sympathetic machinists began fabricating the components after hours, installing them in secret. By March 1944, the unofficial upgrade had reached the B-25 squadrons of the 5th Air Force in New Guinea. Their target was the Rabaul Harbor, a fortress of anti-aircraft guns protecting Japanese shipping. For months, missions against Rabaul were suicide runs, with abysmal results. On April 10, 1944, 6 B-25 seconds, with the new site installed, made a run on a Japanese ammunition ship, the Komaki Maru. Previous doctrine required a low-level skip-bombing attack, flying directly into the teeth of the harbor's defenses. Instead, these 6 planes came in high, at 10,000 feet. In the lead plane, Bombardier Lieutenant David Chen watched his dynamic reticle dance, compensating for the wind and the slight drift of the ship at anchor. 1 pass, 6 bombs. Chen's after-action report was terse. Target bracketed, secondary explosions observed. Massive. No sign of target remained. 6 bombs did what hundreds had failed to do. All 6 bombers returned to base. The data was undeniable. In combat conditions, the vaunted Norden bomb site had a circular error probable of over 1,200 feet, meaning only 50% of bombs landed within a circle that size. Early field reports on Eleanor's device showed a CEP of under 250 feet. It was a staggering 500% increase in accuracy. The entire strategic playbook was rewritten. Hardened targets once deemed impossible for aerial bombing narrow bridges, submarine pens. Specific factory buildings were now squarely on the table. The war of attrition, of sending waves of bombers hoping one would get lucky, was over. A new era of surgical precision had begun. An internal Army Air Forces memo from May 1944, assessing bombing effectiveness in the Admiralty Islands campaign, noted a 70% reduction in sorties required per target destroyed. The memo credited improved crew training and revised tactical approaches. The impact on morale was electric. Pilots who had grown fatalistic, who viewed every mission as a coin toss, now flew with a newfound confidence. They weren't just dropping bombs into a grid square, they were hunters. In a letter home dated June 7, 1944, Captain Sam Russo, of the 345th Bomb Group wrote, "Something's different, honey. We used to pray just to make it back. Now, the boys are making bets on who can put their bomb closest to the target. We hit a command bunker yesterday you couldn't see from 5,000 feet. For the first time, it feels like we're in control." The invention was saving lives not just by destroying the enemy more efficiently, but by drastically reducing the number of times Allied airmen had to fly into harm's way. As the device was quietly standardized, it was given the sterile official designation Trajectory Corrector T4. Eleanor Vance's name was never mentioned. The silent revolution had a weapon, but its creator remained a ghost. When the victory parades marched down Main Street in 1945, Eleanor Vance wasn't on a reviewing stand. She was back in her small suburban house, helping her son with his algebra homework, the faint smell of machine oil replaced by baking bread. Her war was over. The official Bureau of Ordnance Technical Manual for the Dynamic Reticle Bomb Sight, Model 3, published in March 1945, credits its development to a Special Projects Team at the Naval Research Laboratory. Eleanor Vance's name does not appear. She was a civilian, a woman, a temporary contributor. Her contribution was filed away, her name buried under the weight of official military history. She never received a medal or a commendation. She simply received her final paycheck and went home. But the men who flew with her invention knew. They may not have known her name, but they knew her work. Captain Davies, the same pilot who watched his bombs fall uselessly into the Pacific in 1944, writes in his post-war memoir, "They gave us this new sight in early '45. The mechanics called it the Vance Reticle unofficially. We just called it the Miracle Worker. Missions we wouldn't have even attempted a year prior became routine. We stopped losing crews on simple runs. I don't know who Vance was, but whoever they were, they saved my entire squadron." The principles Eleanor pioneered a dynamic aiming system that calculated for real-time variables instead of ideal conditions became the foundation for every bomb sight and targeting system that followed. From the computerized systems in the F-4 Phantom over Vietnam to the advanced electro-optical targeting pods on today's F-35 fighter jets, the DNA of Eleanor's kitchen table design endures. Her insight fundamentally changed the nature of aerial warfare, proving that precision was not a matter of complex machinery, but of elegant, adaptable logic. Eleanor Vance died of natural causes in 1982 at the age of 74. Her obituary in the local paper mentioned her love of gardening and her years as a devoted mother. It did not mention that she helped win a war. In 1997, a small plaque was added to the Women in Military Service for America Memorial. Among a list of civilian contributors, one line reads, "Eleanor Vance, mathematical analyst." No context, no explanation, but her true legacy isn't carved on a monument. It's written in the flight logs of pilots who came home. It's present in the families that were started, the children that were born, because their fathers didn't die in a fiery wreck over some forgotten island. She represents the quiet, unseen architects of victory, the individuals who, armed with intellect and fueled by a fierce determination, fought their own battles far from the front lines. Eleanor proved that the most powerful weapon in any arsenal is not a bomb, but a mind that refuses to accept the status quo, a mind that dares to believe a better way is possible.